What's up, y'all? It's your boy Charles checking in. Charles on Ed's World. Hit the thumbs up button. We're going to check out this book from Audible. It's called The Black Brothers, Inc. The Violent Rise and Fall of Philadelphia's Black Mafia by Patrick Griffin. Let's go ahead and check it out, guys. Hit the thumbs up button, and I'm going to come back with my reaction.
Inevitable that the two groups would come into contact, and given the uncompromising nature of both, a violent clash seemed likely. Yet any notions Sam Christian and his men may have had that they could simply take over black Muslim territories the way they had with many neighborhood gangs were dispelled by several high-profile black Muslim shootings. Faced with a turf war that they would undoubtedly lose, the Black Mafia opted to become, in essence, the extortion arm of Temple 12. Christian and other Black Mafia members were already Muslims and knew many members of the mosque. It was the formality of the relationship and the conversion of many underlings that made the deal significant. Depending on a Black Mafia affiliate's standing in the Muslim faith, ability to generate money, and prior history of violence, he could be incorporated into the intimidating fruit of Islam.
Wow.
Sam Christian was immediately made a captain in the FOI. He would be responsible for sanctioning murders and other criminal acts, and reported directly to Jeremiah Shabazz. Roosevelt Spooks Fitzgerald became brother investigator to Shabazz and reviewed prospective members, complaints on active members, and possible security leaks. The informal absorption of the Black Mafia into the mosque was never complete, however. Many Black Mafia affiliates chose to forsake becoming Muslims and were therefore excluded from positions of power. These affiliates continued to operate, however, with the permission of the Black Mafia leadership, although they now paid a higher percentage of their profits in tribute to their bosses. The new structure provided several benefits. For both the criminal elements in the Black Muslims in Philadelphia and Chicago and the Black Mafia, the take would be greater, since there would be a virtual monopoly on the narcotics trade in several significant sections of the city, and the trade would have the backing of some of the city's most notorious criminals. The newly formed group's presence on the street also had an intimidating effect on witnesses to their activities. Victims and witnesses generally would not testify against either group prior to the merger. Now, the prospect of facing in court one of a 200-strong criminal supergroup of hardened street soldiers was even more frightening. The Black Mafia now felt comfortable expanding their extortion to include many legitimate businesses. They and the Black Muslims had avoided a fight in the streets that would have been costly both in manpower and in business, as any such battle would have drawn heat from the cops. The Muslims had much to gain, as they would now receive portions of the Black Mafia's narcotics and extortion rackets, while maintaining the profits from their own illicit activities. Perhaps the biggest beneficiaries, however, were low and mid-level Black Mafia affiliates who opted not to enter the mosque. Though they kept a smaller percentage of the profits, because both the Black Mafia and the Black Muslim commands were now getting a cut, all of these affiliates now had more recognition, backing, and power on the street. They faced less competition, their territories expanded, and they had more business and job security than before the merger. The Black Mafia's highest command seemingly had less to gain, since they would now be sharing some of their profits with the mosque. Law enforcement sources placed the group's contribution to the Black Muslims as high as $4,000 per month. For them, however, security was worth the tribute they now paid. The merger afforded the Black Mafia the opportunity to create a more powerful political problem for authorities, for it was no longer simply race, but religion, too, that could be exploited as needed. In addition to the public relations challenges the alliance presented to authorities, the syndicate now routinely attempted to exploit the legal system. Two defendants in one high-profile case appealed their convictions on the grounds of racial and religious prejudice. In another noteworthy case, Black Mafia attorneys criticized the voir dire process with particular respect to the purported antisocial propensities of the Black Muslims. Specifically, defense counsel urged that the court ask 6 specific questions of the individual jurors designed to elicit the jurors' attitudes to the black Muslims. The court refused, and instead directed general questions to the panel at large with respect to prejudice on the basis of race, religion, or membership in the black Muslims.
Mm.
In this atmosphere, otherwise nondescript robbery and extortion trials assumed serious racial and religious undertones. One high-profile case involved a prospective juror admitting she might be confusing the so-called Black Mafia with the Black Muslims.
Mm.
On appeal, defense counsel argued that the court failed to fully explore the prejudices of potential jurors against members of the Black Muslim faith. Another benefit of the merger, which would be essential to several of the Black Mafia's elite, was the ability of the Muslims to hide wanted criminals throughout their national chain of mosques. Philadelphia alone had at least 5 mosques. For authorities, it was inherently more difficult to obtain search warrants for the mosques because they were, at some level, places of worship. The mosques also employed Black Mafia fugitives as needed, and some mosques doubled as warehouses for the group's arsenal of weapons. Police received detailed information regarding the existence of stored weapons in the 2 largest Philadelphia mosques, along with a protocol for how they were to be maintained and accessed. Intelligence sources also described a mosque in Pittsburgh with a firing range in its basement. The Black Mafia gained further stability, continuity, and recruits from the Black Muslim prison networks. At some point in the 1960s, many prisons, particularly in the northeastern United States, became the province of the Black Muslims. Intelligence came through that the Muslims were in control of the major prisons and were considered by inmates to be the best form of protection.
Mm.
Young prisoners with lesser sentences would join the Muslims for the purposes of protection and were then schooled in criminal ways. Generally speaking, Black Muslim prison leaders were lifers and had nothing to lose by committing acts of violence and insubordination. If a top Black Muslim was transferred to another institution, his rank and position was retained, and the recruitment continued. Their protection was to be paid back through various means once the convict returned to the outside. Often this meant simply that financial deals were brokered, while on other occasions it involved providing various resources for family members and girlfriends. For the highest level of Black Muslims, beneficiaries of their protection who got out of prison were to retain drug territories once held by the hierarchy and remit a percentage of the proceeds. In Philadelphia's Holmesburg Prison and Pennsylvania's Graterford Prison, 45 minutes northwest of the city, Muhammad Speaks was a popular read. The Black Muslim populations there were significant enough that it was not uncommon for Jeremiah Shabazz to be called upon to help settle disputes. Indeed, NOI activities were so pervasive in Philadelphia prisons that several employees voiced concerns for their safety. "I used to love my job," said one Holmesburg guard. "Now I mark the calendar each day and say, well, that's another day toward retirement. The Muslims have close-order drill and practice karate. All I and the other guards can do is see that they go in and come out of their cells at the right time. They are calling the shots in there." Another Holmesburg worker said part of the reason he quit his job was the growth of the Black Muslim movement. The Black Mafia also exploited some of the several Black Muslim businesses in the city. For instance, there were 2 Shabazz bakeries, one located at Broad Street and Susquehanna Avenue, and one on South 60th Street. The Shabazz Steak Shop was located at 6406 Stenton Avenue, and Spooks Fitzgerald operated the Shabazz Steak and Take on South 24th Street. Each of these locations came under extensive surveillance because law enforcement believed they were fronts for illicit Black Mafia activities. The vast majority of Black Mafia affiliates arrested listed one of these locations as their place of employment, while others listed themselves as employees of Muhammad Speaks. One aspect of the loosely knit Black Mafia Temple 12 fabric was clear. A percentage of all money from Black Mafia activities was to be remitted in some fashion to the Philadelphia Mosque, headed by Jeremiah Shabazz. Each mosque, while under his ultimate control, was run by a lieutenant who was responsible for picking up protection money and the proceeds from other illegal operations in his designated territory each week. According to a police informant, Shabazz was confident and not at all worried about law enforcement agencies probing the Black Mafia, since he had kept himself far removed from actual involvement. His right-hand man was identified only as Lieutenant Gerald X, and was described by street sources as a ruthless murderer. Gerald would travel throughout the city's black neighborhoods with a select few Black Mafia members to commandeer lucrative drug corners. Law enforcement authorities and numerous street sources firmly believe that, after Shabazz took his percentage of the proceeds, his Philadelphia mosque then sent a portion back to Elijah Muhammad in Chicago. This confusing merger caused outsiders grief when trying to understand the groups involved. It is also why references since have intermittently referred to Philadelphia's Muslim mob or Muslim Mafia. In fact, what those who use these terms are referencing was the newly syndicated Black Mafia criminal subgroup of Temple 12. By the time Sam Christian and the rest of the Black Mafia were more formally incorporated into the mosque, the foundation for underworld success was laid. Temple 12 was thriving under Jeremiah Shabazz and exploiting the militant strand of the Black Pride movement that rationalized many dubious acts under the ends justifies the means philosophy, or as Malcolm X once famously put it, by any means necessary. Shabazz's local Black coalition and national NOI connections would also come in handy for his pursuits and for the syndicate. One of Shabazz's Philadelphia converts, who would also make a name for himself in the Black Mafia, was overwhelmed by his introduction to NOI. John Griffin, a.k.a. Omar Jamal, went to Temple 12 and saw a stage with a blackboard just beside the podium with a compelling message. On one side was a drawing of the American flag, a cross, and a black man hanging from a tree, said Griffin. The words on that side said, "Slavery, suffering, and death equals Christianity." On the other side, it read, "Freedom, justice, and equality equals Islam." And, right in the middle of the board, were the words, "Which one will survive Armageddon?" Griffin was impressed with other things he saw that day, but came away most influenced by the talk given by Jeremiah Shabazz. "I was amazed. Never had I heard such things. Never had I even thought of us in comparison with others in God's creation. Nor had I ever been in the midst of so many single-minded black people thinking about and being concerned with their own." Around the time the Black Mafia was being more fully absorbed into the mosque, Griffin was arrested with Spooks Fitzgerald and Edward Sistrunk for possessing loaded firearms, one of which was stolen, following a car stop. After their arrest, a robbery victim identified Sistrunk and Fitzgerald as two of the three men who had broken into his home the week before, tied up his wife and daughter, and hit him on the head with a gun before taking $500. By then, the impressive, intimidating presence of Temple 12 members on the streets of Black Philadelphia was palpable. It was said that someone could park a car in a rough neighborhood with the windows down and the keys in the ignition, and only needed to place a copy of Muhammad Speaks on the dashboard to ensure no one would touch it. Yet Jeremiah Shabazz was taken off the FBI's agitator index after the Bureau concluded, "He is interested in furthering the cause of the NOI, but is not interested in joining other groups that were involved in racial disturbances. During past racial disturbances, Shabazz has instructed his members not to take part. It is not felt he would engage in treason, rebellion, insurrection, or other such acts which would result in interference with, or a threat to, the survival and effective operation of national, state, or local government." The merger had taken place. The criminal powerhouse within the mosque was greater than ever, yet to the FBI, Minister Shabazz was the acceptable face of the area's Black Muslim movement.
That's deep. That's deep. Let's cut off right there, man.
Chapter
Listen, this
4.
is pretty deep. This is some deep stuff, man. I didn't know how intricate that the Black Muslim movement and the Black Mafia was so intertwined together, you know. But I do agree with them when they say the ends justify the means, right? You know, you living in a country where you feel like you can't really move and be a man. You have to, you know what I'm saying? You got to do certain circumstances to get power. You know, they were trying to obtain power. You know, a lot of it was illegal. You know what I'm saying? But wow, some deep stuff. I want to listen to more of this audio book, and if you want to listen to it, check it out on Audible. It's called Black Brothers Inc. Violent Rise of and Fall of Philadelphia Black Mafia by Sean Patrick Griffith. Go ahead and check it out, guys, and leave in the comments. Let me know what y'all think. Go ahead and subscribe to Charles and Israel. Y'all take care.